Hello. Welcome to Stype booth at NAB 2022, and I'm very glad to see you all again after 3 long years of the pandemic. We've been quite busy, and we have some new toys to show that we're proud of, both in software and hardware. So a brief overview of what we are going to show is we are going to show 2 tracking devices and 2 software workflows. So as from the tracking devices, we are most known for our product RedSpy. That is the world's most used camera tracking system among the broadcasters. And then we will also show the follower. It is our new tracking system, which is object, people, and camera tracking system. So it can track not only the cameras, but also people and objects. And you will see how great effects we can achieve with that. We will also be showing XR Workflow. I'll start with a few words about our XR Workflow. XR is an industry term for this kind of setup where a presenter stands on the LED tiles, and then we also have LED tiles in the back of the presenter. To make something like this possible, a first prerequisite is to have very precise camera tracking. You can also do it with less precise camera trackings, but it would not be this perfectly aligned. This level of pixel perfect calibration can probably only be achieved with the system that we are using on this booth right now, which is a RedSpy. This is RedSpy, a small black cylinder. It's actually an infrared camera that has infrared LEDs around the lens, and those LEDs are shining infrared light up towards the ceiling. In the ceiling we have small retroreflective stickers which are there so they can reflect this infrared light. So RedSpy camera can then see what looks like a starry sky, which helps to figure out its position in 3D space, like X, Y, Z, pan, tilt, roll. And that way, since RedSpy is attached to the studio camera, like what we can see here, we're also using it on our crane, but here is an example. We use a firm attachment to attach the RedSpy to the studio camera, so when the studio camera rotates, the RedSpy rotates together, and then we can just do some inverse calculation to know exactly the studio camera position and orientation in 3D space. What is so special? Why we are showing this workflow here to you? Okay, we are using RedSpy to achieve it, but we also made the software to make this possible. The reason why our software is so special is because, first of all, it's based on Unreal. So Unreal is a free render engine that you can just download online and put our plugin to it to make this possible. It is very quick to set up compared to what people are used to in the industry, what it takes to set up this kind of workflow. You can get this running in a matter of hours. There is also something in our software that you can't find elsewhere. For example, this insane level of color calibration. What does it mean? First, you have LED wall, LED floor on which I'm standing, and it is 4mm pixel pitch between LEDs, and it's made by one manufacturer. This is ROI floor. But behind me we have another manufacturer, Uniluminum, something like that, and there is a different pixel pitch on the wall. So when you turn them on, you have, and just display the same color on them, like gray color, you will see a different color in the camera, on the floor and on the wall, and the connection between the wall and the floor will be very visible. And even between the same type of panels, like left and right wall, you will see the connection, and these angles will be highly noticeable. So the art is to make a software that will hide all of those imperfections, and that will make a perfect blend between, so you don't feel the connections, and that the colors are seamless. For example, due to these problems, it is often the case that when setting up XR stages, people will make the wall rounded, like a small angle between each tile to avoid those angles. Like in this setup, we've shown that it is not necessary to do so. We made it intentionally like this, a cube, the worst possible example, just to show how good the color calibration is here. The magic you can see on the screen, on a TV screen. Basically, if you look down, it looks different, everything is kind of skewed, but on a TV screen, everything is seamless, everything is the same. This transition is not noticeable. On top of that, maybe even a bigger problem is to solve how to extend this set. Like if you see down there, this cube is rather small, but we want this set to look bigger and we want to extend it somehow. This is what you see on the screen, but how this is done, right? And if you do it, you also don't want to feel the transition between what the LED panel is and what is virtually added. So if I try to walk out, you will see that I start disappearing. This is because somewhere from this position to that position, we start transitioning from the real camera image. This is real camera image, and here we have some set extension, like a separate engine for the foreground elements. So the big challenge in achieving this is to make this positionally pixel perfectly calibrated, so that there is no tearing of the graphics on the edge of the wall where the foreground graphic starts. As you can see, this is solved perfectly here. Another big problem is, aside from the fact that we are like calculating and making the same color on the wall and the floor, we also need to make this set extension color perfectly aligned to those two, which is like a very tough challenge. And if you look around with these kind of workflows, if you check how it looks at the edge where the wall ends and where the set extension starts, you will usually see a completely different color on the outside, and when you move the camera, you will see the graphic starts tearing apart. So that is like a huge deal for us. This new calibration has just been finished. We just released it like 2 weeks ago, and you're the lucky ones to see it in person already. On top, I forgot to mention that we can add foreground elements as well. Just let me stand here. So if you see this chain in front of me, is rendered by the same engine that is rendering this set extension. So we can also have foreground and background elements. So there are some advantages and disadvantages to this workflow compared to the green screen workflow. I'll mention a few advantages why one would want to go with this kind of workflow. For example, for the presenter, it's easier to visualize where it is. Like I can see that I'm standing on some rocks, and I can see that here is a dinosaur, or what it is, some monster head. So I don't have to imagine it. So if I'm doing some election show or some movie shooting, I know where I can stand and I can be pretty precise in my movements. Aside from that, it helps to make the image more photorealistic. For example, you don't need to do chroma keying, you avoid all problems, and you don't need to adjust keying parameters. And you can also get nice things like reflections. So if you bring in a shiny object, like if I put a sunglasses and the wall is kind of bigger, then on the sunglasses you will also see the reflections of this environment. Or if you put in a car, shooting a car commercial, on a car windshield you would see like city lights passing, you know, something that you can't do on a green screen. Now I will invite Ivan to amuse you a bit with all the effects and a great combination of our green screen workflow featuring our GreenKiller chroma keyer combined with the follower object people and camera tracking system.
Okay guys, so that was the XR workflow with the LED screens. Now I'm going to talk to you about the green screen workflow, which is virtual studios, virtual sets. Imagine if we are in a sports set before a big sporting event, and I'm your host. We have made like this a little bit futuristic set, and now the big match is coming up. Let's say Croatia and Brazil are playing, and we want to load up some graphics of the two countries. So these two pop up. And now we have maybe some guests talking about the teams, what we can expect from the match. And we want to go a little bit into the analysis. So we maybe load up another graphic of some of the key players to maybe try to guess what we're going to see in this match. So let's load Luka Modric. He's the captain of Croatia, one of the best players in the world, also a key player for Real Madrid. And now let's analyze his play. So we have done this in this way. So when I walk here, we have some screens going on. Let's zoom in a little bit what we have here. Yeah, we have a couple of elements of his play. But when I do this, we actually take the video and he starts playing. And now we can actually analyze his play. Like his passing, his scoring. Is he contributing just in attack? Maybe he's a good defensive player too. Let's see. So I want to show that he's a problem for the opposition even in defense. Here he's tackling Lionel Messi. He's not afraid to get dirty if it's needed and work hard for his team. Let's park this one too. And let's show some more goals from goals scored. Like long range goals. You can see how dynamic this makes the show. At the same time, while I was moving this, my colleague was also moving the camera, so things can look really dynamic, as I said. Let's repeat it. Like if you move the camera, and I take this. Yeah, just a moment. And also, we are tracking. So we are tracking this thing that I'm holding, and we're also tracking myself with a beacon that is here in my belt. So this makes it possible that when I have the graphic, I can put it behind me. So let's say we are done with this one, and we focus on that one. And when I'm done with that one, I put it somewhere here. I take this one again. I can pretend to be looking at it, like it seems realistic because I can be behind it or in front of it. I will put one in front of me, and some of them are behind me. So if I stay here, this is something that was pretty much impossible up until recently. And Tini, if you move the camera a little bit to the side, it's going to look even cooler. It's obvious that I'm in 3D space with some magical elements. Let's get it out of the way. Okay. So how is this possible? I mentioned some LED beacons. One is here, one is on my belt. And the signals are picked up by follower witness cameras, which you can see glowing in blue color. The color can be turned off if you want, but we turn it on to be more noticeable. And this can also track the camera that is behind you over there. It also has LEDs on top. We call this the spider module because it has pipes going out. So with this system, with these witness cameras, you can track anything you want. You can track people, objects, or cameras. So you can have like 5 cameras in your studio, all tracked with one system. Because this add-on that we call the spider, it's the cheaper part of the system. So if you have more cameras, the system scales really well. This was the explanation of the technology when it comes to the hardware. Now I want to talk a little bit about the software, because software is what does the final touch before you actually see it on screen. So everything here is rendered in StypeLand, which is a plugin for Unreal Engine. And one key element of StypeLand is the GreenKiller, which is the keyer that takes out all of the green and replaces it with the real set. So let's see how well we are keying stuff. If we focus on the outline of my shirt, you will see that there is actually no outline. If you've seen some inferior keyers, oftentimes you would see some outline between the person and the virtual set. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you're choosing your keyer. Another thing to keep in mind is how you are keying hair, which obviously I don't need here, but my colleague is going to join me. Welcome, Sven. So as you can see, you can even distinguish individual hairs. This was thought to be impossible until recently. Thank you, Sven. You have nice hair. And the third part I want to show is the floor. So usually, if you remember looking at some green screen productions, it will seem like the person is floating in the air. Something will be odd because it boils down to the shadows. Because if there are no shadows, something is going to look a little bit off. This is also one advantage of the green screen compared to the LED. In LED, it's hard to pull off shadows. So oftentimes people put something real, like a carpet on the floor or some real physical thing. In green screen with AR Keyer, you can have realistic shadows. You can even notice my shoelace shadows. This is how precise the Keyer is. And also we put, on purpose, we put like half of the floor is plexiglass, half of it doesn't have plexiglass. This is to show that you can achieve in a very cheap way, by adding some normal plexiglass, you can have reflections. So if your designers have made a futuristic glossy set, it would be natural to see some reflections. So if you add plexiglass, using AR Keyer with no extra effort, you can have realistic shadows. And you can see the bottom of my feet, of my sneakers. So there is nothing fake going on. This is the real reflections that you see. I'm pointing out that it's not fake because some companies try to solve this thing by taking the real image and flipping it upside down, making it a little bit like transparent or less intensive to try to emulate shadows and reflections. But we are doing it, we are catching the real reflections in the real physical world. So how do we make it possible? Well, during the setup of the GreenKiller, we take everything out of the set, everybody walks out, and we map the green screen, we scan it. This way the system learns where to expect each nuance of the color. So depending on how you turned on your lights, which way you pointed them, the green screen will be lit up a little bit differently. But our system will learn it, and it will know exactly, at this position I'm expecting a certain shade of green. So whenever something changes, it will know, aha, okay, something is going on, we need to send it as the real thing. So as you can see, the shadows are acting naturally. If your set is like, if you want to emulate a big, huge space and you don't want to have shadows on the back, which will give off the illusion, we can disable the shadows back. So you can keep the shadows on the floor, and you will have the illusion of a huge space behind you, which is a common advantage of the green screen. You can have a big studio, even if your actual studio is small. So this was GreenKiller, part of our StypeLand rendering suite. And I talked about the follower tracking system. Stype, you want to add something?
Okay, so how follower works. We have those witness cameras up, mounted on a truss. Basically, those cameras are looking down into the environment, and they are looking for LED beacons that are blinking the infrared light. So this is the LED beacon. So there is a small infrared LED. This is what Ivan is wearing under his shirt to track his position, so he can walk in front or in behind the camera. This is what is used to track a person. If we want to draw in the air, we put this beacon on a pen, and we can then make drawings in the air with the pen. If we want to track a camera with the follower, all that we have to do is put several beacons on the camera, like, thank you, we can park it here. So you can see here, on this module we have 8 LED beacons, just for extra redundancy, 3 would be enough. So with 8 we can get perfect camera tracking, and this module we call it Spider, because it looks like a spider. So each LED is not only blinking infrared light, but it is doing so in a unique pattern. So it's blinking a binary code. So each beacon is different to one another, and the system cannot confuse one with another, which is what makes the system highly robust.
So now we can switch to the AR workflow. So far we've shown XR, VR over here. AR is when you have a real physical set with some augmented reality elements. As you can see, my name is floating in the air. This is also because I have the tracker on my belt. So if I take it here, it's gonna move. Tin also has his, but his tracker dropped a little bit. Yeah. And also, if I take the pen, I can draw in the air. And here you can see just how fast the tracking is and how precise. And we can also do some cool stuff like drawing in 3D. So this is now object tracking and camera tracking at the same time.
The big advantage is you don't have to have 2 separate systems, one tracking the camera, another tracking the pen. With follower, everything is in the same coordinate system, and this big headache is removed of the aligning the two worlds.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go back to the green screen.
Okay, let's also show one very cool feature that we have. We call it the virtual zoom. Like, as you can see, the camera is standing still, but we are virtually zooming out of the set and zooming in. So this is a very cool feature of StypeLand that you can do.
Maybe we can also show, like, while it's zoomed out, we move the camera a little bit, it's gonna look like huge move.
Okay, let's zoom out virtually, and now let's move the camera to see how it looks with tracking. So as you can see now, we are moving the camera.
It looks like it's on a huge jib.
With this feature, you can have like a tiny room and make it look like really big.
So I think now we've covered pretty much everything. We talked about the RedSpy camera tracking, which is tracking that tripod camera. We talked about the follower tracking system, which can track that camera over there with the spider module. It can track myself, it can track my pens. And we talked about the rendering, which is done by StypeLand, part of a plugin for Unreal Engine, and our GreenKiller Keyer. And also our XR workflow and how we are having such nice color calibration.